I know, the content ID system being broke isn't exactly breaking news, but it's worse than you think. It's not just the content ID system, it's not just the algorithms and bots, it's real people making fraudulent decisions. And I've been dealing with this for years, and you probably have too, but I have learned a few little tricks to get around it. Here's a few examples of things that the content ID system has thrown up as a match, and it gets really annoying after you spent days creating a demo and someone claims a tiny 10-second clip and all your earnings on it. So that's all the earnings I get from what normally stacks up to be a couple of days of work at least. And that's not a lot of money. There's not loads of money sloshing around the YouTube system for synth demos. I think if I get 10,000 views, I'm lucky, and those 10,000 views add up to maybe £20. So it's not a huge amount of cash, but it is mine. I deserve to keep it, not give it to someone else. I even get different publishers claiming the same clip, and I get real people upholding their copyright claims when I dispute them and demonstrate that it's got nothing to do whatsoever with the track they're claiming. So it's not just the content ID system, it's not just the bots, it's also real people who are abusing the system. You can see here that this one isn't the bots, it's a manual review. And let's just take a look at this one because it's absolutely insane, it's criminal, it's literally somebody trying to steal my income. This is a demo of a little synth called the Sculpt, and I put a nice little piece of music at the end just to show what it can sound like. After a manual review, so not a bot, a copyright owner has claimed some material on your video. Sculpt versus OB6 version 2. Let's take a look at what I'm supposed to have copied. It's the only thing I can find with the same name. It looks like a pretty unique name. Just putting a little break in there so I don't get caught again. You're listening? Does that sound anything like this? It doesn't sound the same, it's not using the same chords, it's not in the same key, it's not using the same sort of instruments, it hasn't got vocals on it, but somebody, a person has actually gone into my video and decided that they're going to claim it for themselves. So remember, it's not the content ID system, and nobody's watching this video for 30 minutes to find a 30-second clip at the end that doesn't sound like a track I don't reference, and it doesn't sound anything like. How on earth they can claim it is absolutely beyond me. So I decided to do a little test of the algorithms myself. There was a bit of chatter about it on one of the synth forums on Facebook, so I put together a few filter sweeps in a single video just as an experiment, and sure enough I got a fair few claims. Starsky Car, a copyright owner using content ID, has claimed some material on your video. And this is the FFS effing filter sweeps, all sweeps at 1080p. Copyright content is ready to rumble. So let's review the options. So here we go, here's what's been claimed so far on it. Ready to Rumble by Nicky Romero. Content found during 7:01 to 7:16, so a 15-second segment. What is that 15-second segment? Okay, so that's Nicky Romero, is it? Next one, Lollipop by Candyman, is that? 26 to 37, 11-second segment. Okay, you're getting the idea. Honor by Depth Charge. Here we go, what's this? This is an 18-second segment. And I'm keeping these all well below 10 seconds, which I'll explain later. Otherwise it'll all get claimed again. So here's a big one, a 32-second segment. That's 32 seconds of that synth doing that. So this is, let's take a look. So So it's obviously an electronic track, but are there any bits in this that are strictly just a filter sweep? You can hear it underneath there, but there's loads of other stuff going on top. Quite nice. But no, there's nothing that's a 30-second filter sweep, is there? And then of course there's the Chemical Brothers. I did a whole video on the Chemical Brothers on their own because this was one that just sort of stunned me really. And it got loads of traction from Chemical Brothers followers that were really annoyed by it. But they hadn't actually watched my video. I didn't blame the Chemical Brothers themselves. It's obviously the content ID, but bit of fun maybe. Oh, and it's the same synth. It's actually the same section. So the two tracks are claiming the same bit, which obviously can't be the case. Nice synth though, that, innit? Is that meant to be it? Doesn't sound too much like it, does it? I'm sure it used to show you which bit of their track. Oh, there it is there. Is that it? Probably. But yeah, not all these were included the first time I uploaded this a couple of years ago or last year. And the most infuriating of these was one called Guitar-oment, which sounds like this. And I don't want to play too much because obviously this will get claimed again by them, but it sounds absolutely nothing like any of the filter sweeps on any of the synths here. That was on the video. And again, after human intervention, so a real person, not a bot, has taken a look at the claim and decided to uphold it. So uphold their claim of the copyright of a video showing nothing but filter sweeps and claiming it's their song. And if that's not fraudulent, I don't know what is. Okay, the content ID system can make errors, it can get things wrong, it's just a bot, it's an algorithm, but this human knew that they were wrong, they knew they were making a mistake, or they're just a thief. And it's absolutely infuriating. I know you can dispute it, I've disputed others and you've seen that they've been upheld by a person. So when a person has actually claimed it, I'm going back to that person or back to that publisher and saying you were wrong. And it's up to them to decide if I am or not. And then you can take it higher up to YouTube and it's just not worth it, especially not with these filter sweep videos that were just a bit of fun. So in the end, I try and change the videos myself so that they don't get caught out or don't get involved in all this nonsense. And when I've used samples, it's got even more bizarre. I've got different people claiming the same sample, none of whom actually own the original sample. So I did a little demo of this. It's called Polyend Tracker. It's basically an all-in-one studio and sampler. And I was doing something to show how you'd sample vinyl and put it into this and make a finished track. And the track in question was by a band called Chicago, recorded in 1976 and owned, it says here, by CBS Records. But when I uploaded it, it was ID'd as being owned by the Bucketheads, who of course used the same sample, but it's not their recording to claim. I literally show myself recording from this record. I take it out of the sleeve, I put it on the vinyl, I show the needle going on the record and it being sampled onto the tracker. So of course I disputed it and I explained that I'm recording from the original, the same one the Bucketheads have used. I show that I'm recording it from the original, not from the Bucketheads or any derivatives of the Bucketheads recording. And the dispute was actually rejected and they upheld their claim. And let's just think about that for a second. They're claiming the copyright on something that clearly isn't theirs. And they may share the publishing on the Bucketheads record, they probably do. They'll have paid a license fee perhaps, they'll have had to clear the sample, and that's the Bucketheads record, not this. This is Chicago, this was recorded in 1976, possibly before the Bucketheads were even born. If Chicago had claimed it, to be honest, I wouldn't have been that bothered, but that annoyed me, so I made a new version using exactly the same sample, same recording, just edited it differently. And then that was claimed by the Swing Kings. And this is an MP3, which to be honest doesn't make it feel too professional. And ad rev sounds a bit too much like ad revenue and a money-making scheme. So I looked up ad rev publishers, and it says here we connect you to a meaningful and growing revenue stream and proactively seek out opportunities to maximize your found time and earned revenue. Let's face it, that sounds like they're actively going out and looking for sources of cash for you, which is okay if you're a small artist and a publisher, I get it, but not if you're claiming stuff that isn't yours. So I looked up the Swing King street sounds on YouTube and found this, and sure enough, it's just another track sampling the same thing. So here we have two publishers falsely claiming the copyright on something they obviously don't own and upholding the claim. And let's not forget there's also a fair use policy for education. No one's watching this to listen to the Bucketheads, no one's definitely watching the video to listen to the Swing Kings, and no one's watching the video to listen to Chicago. The video is demonstrating how to make a track based on a sample from some vinyl, so I did need to use some vinyl to do it, and I am trying to educate people on how to use the Polyend tracker. And importantly here, nobody's losing money because they're watching my video instead of watching the Bucketheads, Chicago, or the Swing Kings. And that's really important. And as Rick Beato says, you're probably driving traffic to their sites for them to make more money because they've seen your thing and they quite like that track. I wonder where it came from. Let's have a listen to the original. But I have learned how to get around the copyright trap. I've got a couple of little tips coming up that I use regularly, and this isn't a way of avoiding paying an artist for using their stuff, and it's definitely not legal advice, but if you are doing stuff and you get caught by playing a guitar sound or a synth sound, just a couple of little things that you may be able to do to stop all the hassle. So the first thing I do is upload a video at least a day before I want to release it to check. I do this with every single video now. And here's the various versions of the tracker video which were being claimed or are being claimed, so I tweak the content to fall within the regulations. Secondly, if there's a false claim and you dispute it and you don't mind waiting for the 30 days for the claim to expire, then just wait. The claim will probably be dropped by the publisher after 30 days. No one comes in and drops it, they just leave it to expire. But I say probably because, as you've seen, some people have actually upheld those claims, which are obviously wrong. So there are a couple of things you can do just to avoid getting caught. So if you don't want to wait, which I often don't, you'll want to do one of these three things. Firstly, try to put something over the top of the video that's being claimed. I put a little piano riff over this little video of the sculpt. I'm not happy about it, it's not what I wanted to do, but it worked. Secondly, there's a 10-second rule, so don't use more than 10 seconds of a clip in your video. I made a video demoing the vintage Roland TR-909, which was claimed by someone called Mr. Philip Collins, and that's because an 11-second segment of a 10-minute video resembled part of a live performance. And what's important here is that that was an 11-second clip, so we reduced the clip down to 8 seconds, just compress the video a little bit, and it's not caught by the ID system. I think that's some sort of regulation or rule, so anything less than 10 seconds will get through the net. So now I'll cut all the filter sweeps and stuff I do on the synths into stuff that's less than 10 seconds long. I won't do a big long sweep from the high frequencies all the way down to the low ones. I'll do the high, I'll stop, I'll say something, I'll do the mid frequencies, I'll stop, I'll say something. It's not ideal, but it chops everything up into less than 10-second segments. And if you have used a sample, well, make sure you don't use 10 whole seconds or 10 seconds that sound like the same thing, at least. The other thing you can do if you've used a sample is to chop it up and do something inventive with it. Listening to the Chicago sample again, I've cut it up, reversed sections, and generally messed enough with it not to be picked up. I think on the first attempt I cut it up in a similar fashion to the way the Swing Kings had, which is why it was then spuriously picked up by them. And transforming the track or transforming the sample can help you fall into the fair use policy, as transformational use of a sample is allowed for artistic use. But I wouldn't rely on the fair use policy for educational or transformative use or whatever, because at the end of it, it comes down to an argument with you and the publishers. And if people like Ed Sheeran can spend millions of pounds in court on lawyers, you can't, can you? Let's face it. So best thing to do is keep it to under the 10 seconds or change it and chop it enough so it just can't be recognised by an algorithm. And then don't actually put your video up and saying this is a track by so and so and name them, because people are actually going through, typing in names and looking for stuff. So if you say this sounds like a Radiohead track, someone's there. Someone will be there in a publisher's typing in Radiohead and seeing what pops up. If your video pops up, you're going to get a copyright claim. But the good news is, since I've realised all this, I've hardly had any claims whatsoever. In fact, the only ones I've had were on the Chicago track, where I had actually used the sample. Oh, and a Robert Miles track as well, where I took the Robert Miles Children track and I copied it and basically did the same thing on a different synth. So I didn't sample it, but it sounded so similar, it got caught. But that was fair enough, because I was just doing his track. Fair dues. Hands up, Gov. Fine. So I hope that was of use to somebody somewhere, and if it was, please do think about subscribing, ring the bell and join me on Patreon. It all helps to support the channel. So I will see you next time.